before exciting part of AWS course. Any doubts? Today's session we will go slowly because this is the actual meat of the session where we build an automated infrastructure. We'll begin building, and towards the end of the course we will make this infrastructure more sophisticated. But today we will experiment with load balancing and auto scaling, and I want all of you to really understand this well. And of course, do this. You must definitely do this. Don't miss this opportunity of being able to do this on your own. So no questions. So let's begin. So today we'll address load balancing and auto scaling of Amazon AWS. Okay, I am Sri Prakash Neelakandan, a Chief Cloud Architect, and this is the tax support details. So all your queries, please email to tax support with maximum information, so that one reply will be good enough to fix your doubts or issue. Okay. So load balancing. Yesterday we just briefly touched upon load balancing and auto scaling. Let's quickly go over it once more. You have say one hosting account or one web server or one application server and node load balancer. In that scenario, all the requests will be routed somehow to that specific instance. So even if there is one single user accessing your application or your website, or hundreds of users accessing, all these requests will reach that one specific web server. Clear? Now, if you have multiple web servers designed to serve the same application or same website, you can add a service called load balancing, where the requests will arrive at the load balancer and it will somehow route it to these instances on a set of rules that we set. We will see what are those rules. In general, you can assume that load is evenly distributed. Supposing you have 100 servers serving an application or serving a website, and you have 1,000 users accessing the application or website, each user will get 10, each server will get 10 users load. Clear? That is called distribution of load or load balancing. This is an important interview question. You have to know without any doubt what is load balancing. Okay? Any question on load balancing? And remember, most of the AWS configurations are free. But when we use actual resources like disk space or traffic or computing power or memory, there is cost. But load balancer of elastic load balancer of Amazon is not free. It is not a configuration. It is a computing technology which has to receive traffic and use its intelligence to route traffic. So always remember, you just can't simply create load balancer and keep it unused. There will be charge. So next slide. So this is another picture where this is the icon of Amazon's load balancer, and it is called elastic load balancer. Why it's elastic means its power can grow in an unlimited way. You only have to configure one load balancer for your single tier of your application, and Amazon will ensure that it's scaled depending on the number of computers attached. That is why it is called elastic load balancer. And then you have an instance running, another instance running another availability zone, another instance running another availability zone. All these three instances are serving the same application. Now, here I have mentioned fault tolerance of elastic load balancer. This means if one availability zone or a data center in an availability zone goes down, your users will not face difficulties in accessing your application because other two availability zones are serving your application. This is clear. I'm going a bit slow to make sure that these terminologies and its technology behind it are very clear to you. So this is clear. Load balancing allows fault tolerance. So if one data center goes down due to some severe cyclone or storm or any catastrophe, still your application can continue to serve your customers. This is one aspect of load balancing. But here I must tell you, if I terminate this instance manually, or if this instance gets terminated due to some software defect, that instance will not be restarted in an automated way. But these other two working instances will continue to serve your customers. Clear? Any questions on this picture? Ashutosh has a question. Can we emulate a small ELB in our free tier account? What account can we expect to be charged? I am ready to pay if the amount is small. Yes, amount will be small because you're going to see, you have to experiment with load balancer. So you have to be ready to pay small amounts. Amounts will be really small because you're going to experiment these things only under 1 hour, and at the most you will start 2 or 3 instances. Okay, Shivang has a question. How many we can connect with ELB? There is no limit, but you have to check these limits in the website. For in practical purposes, you can treat it as unlimited, but there are of course limits. For those certification exam, you have to know these limits. Kamlesh, in case of any issues with any of the instance, it will automatically bring down that instance. To answer this question, see, there is nothing automatic in this infrastructure. Only thing that Amazon will do is it will distribute traffic to these instances based on the rules set by you. But how your instance behaves, you have to define. If you can define health checks, we will see that later. And if your health check fails, you can terminate the instance and create another instance. You have to do it. We will see how that is done. Okay. Next is Rengarajan. When I buy EC2 load balancer, do we need to configure it algorithm software? No. Rengarajan, we will see that how to configure the load balancer. Today we will see that. And Sai need to do exception handling. Yes, for the instance level, you have to be in charge. Only you will know what defines your application as running well. Only you will know what you need to do to repair the server or restart another server. And so these things we will touch upon as we proceed with more sophisticated infrastructure building towards the end of the course. Rangarajan, will that cost for each instance cost will be independent. Depending on the type of instance, we will use T2 micro. You have to pay for those instances, but it will be just 1 hour or 2 hours of your experiment. Separately, you need to pay. Load balance, you need to pay separately, but these fees are very small. Unless you run it for weeks, they will be very small. Okay. Any other questions on this picture? Okay, great. So this picture we saw, this is about auto scaling. Auto scaling is completely different from load balancing. So you have to know the difference. Auto scaling will automatically add more instances. Suppose you have one instance in this availability zone, and if the load on that instance is higher than what you have defined in your condition, it will add one or more instances in that availability zone. Same thing can happen in another availability zone, another availability zone. So when the load is low on these servers, auto scaling will keep a certain number of instances. When the load increases, auto scaling will add more instances to those availability zones, and load balancer will continue to distribute traffic to those instances when they are ready. So the difference between auto scaling and load balancing is clear. And auto scaling can happen based on different conditions. It can happen based on the load on your server. It can happen based on the day of the week, like if you have excess traffic on Sundays, you can schedule your scaling so that on Sundays you will have 10 servers, on weekdays you may have only 2 servers. And you can also schedule based on seasons, like Christmas vacation or Diwali vacation. You can provide thousands of more servers to handle the additional traffic. Those are all scheduled auto scaling. Remember, auto scaling cannot handle sudden spikes. You need to have planned conditions added to your auto scaling. Sai, instantly, what is that question? Yes, auto scaling cannot instantly start add more servers, because adding a new instance can take about 30 seconds to 1 minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes or even 5 minutes, depending on how complex your instance configuration is, how big your AMI is, etc. So it can take time. So during that time, your users can feel disturbances in their experience. So to avoid that, you have to anticipate these loads and plan. So you as an AWS engineer will be watching the charts and see the usage pattern and see how many 404 errors are being experienced by users, and add precautionary extra servers to handle those scenarios, so that such bad experiences will be kept low. So auto scaling has its own inherent limitations. And next slide is, so any questions so far on load balancing and auto scaling? Okay, great. So now when we do auto scaling, that is when we add instances in an automated way, you have to do a thing called bootstrapping. Shivang, how can we check load balancing working? Yes, today we will create load balancer and see terminate instances, we will increase load and see auto scaling works, etc. today. So just hang on. By end of today, you will see, you will know this. So even if you create an AMI based on your configured instance, still you may have a small user data to update the latest software changes or latest website changes. So when you do auto scaling, you will require bootstrapping, because an AMI may not be the latest, AMI may not have every software that you need, but you must ensure that this bootstrapping should not be too big, or should be kept fast. So you have to ensure that you have to be aware of the time it takes to bootstrap. Bootstrapping is using user data. We have seen many examples of this. Today again we will see this. So any question on bootstrapping? So Kamlesh, can you please explain bootstrapping? So bootstrapping is what we saw in last couple of sessions, the user data that we add to an instance, so that when the instance is launched, it will execute those commands in the bootstrapping script, so that your instance application or a web server is ready to serve your customers. Okay, so Sarvesh, adding data during instance building. Okay, can you elaborate on that statement, Sarvesh? Adding data during instance building. Yes, yes. See now, this is a tricky statement. So Sarvesh says adding data during instance building. Usually, this, for your general understanding, data handling is kept separate from auto scaling, because data has to be atomic or integral, like your shopping cart. Your data has to be kept separately on database servers. Okay, so there you cannot scale, like how we scale computing resources. You cannot scale data resources. So what can we do in such a situation? Any guess? So you have an application that has web pages being served via a web server, but you also have a database to handle the customers. What can we do? Manage resources. You know, in scaling, Okay, just hang on with your questions. Let me duplicate this slide and type something. So you know what is horizontal scaling? Anyone can suggest? Yes, this is adding more servers. Okay, and vertical scaling is adding more power. Okay, so uh, yes, horizontal scaling means adding more servers. So when we say auto scaling, remember, it is always for adding more servers. But vertical scaling, its typical applications are typical applications are for servers, and vertical scaling, typical applications are for, what is it for? Database. Databases. So database, you will increase, Rangarajan, horizontal scaling will not add more memory. Just for your understanding, adding more memory is vertical scaling. Okay. Okay, so now since you have typed many questions, let me read through. So Rangarajan's thing is vertical scaling, yes, CPUs. Okay, so Rangarajan's addressed, can't we auto scale vertically by adding more memory or disk space? You know what, Kamalesh's question is, can't we auto scale vertically by adding more memory or disk space? That is why I put mainly. It is a bit tricky. It is not normally done, but as you gain expertise, you should be able to do. But it is not normally done. Okay, so all practical purposes for now, for the course, understand that auto scaling is for horizontal scaling. Okay. Then Sai, mainframe server. Can you elaborate on that, Sai? It's a statement or a question? And Rangarajan, horizontal scale equal to memory, that is addressed. Yes, yeah, for vertical server, mainframe, but in our case, all these servers are cloud-based servers. Okay, so, and Ashutosh, vertical means capacity, exactly. Then Ashutosh, horizontal means more servers, exactly. Ashutosh, then Sai, vertical, adding more power to one server. Yes, exactly. Adding more power to one server. Okay, that is a better statement. Then Shivang, resources. What is that? Do you want to elaborate, Shivang, on that? Because I want you guys to really understand the difference between load balancing, auto scaling, and its application before we do the practicals. Shivang, you want to elaborate on your statement? Okay. Now, yes, like RAM, STD, that is called vertical scaling. Okay. So So databases, usually you vertically scale, but here again there is exception. There are exceptions like read replicas. Okay, like see, for instance, take Amazon website. 95% of the users will be browsing the website, searching and checking the products, or it's called checking the catalog. They are not updating anything on the database. They are not adding anything to the shopping cart. They are not checking out. So such cases, they are not changing anything in the database. So when you are not changing anything in the database, such databases are just like web servers serving static web pages. So such cases, you can replicate database servers called read replicas and serve the customers. We will touch upon when we learn about Amazon's RDS database. Okay. So that is so load balancing is clear, auto scaling is clear, and app auto scaling is mainly for horizontal scaling. So these are all clear. These are all very clear to all of you. Yes. Can I get some confirmations? Great. Okay, so now auto scaling advantages: increase or decrease your EC2 instance capacity automatically as per set conditions. As per set conditions, increase instances during demand increase to maintain performance, and vice versa. It saves cost so that you don't have to over provision. No need to over provision your infrastructure. Okay, so you save cost. Then suitable for stable demand and daily, weekly, seasonal demand changes. That is not suitable for spikes. Sudden demands auto scaling will not do. So what you have to do is you have to watch the pattern and accordingly take measures, so that based on the such demands you have to add more instances. Yes, only planned and scheduled. No, sorry. Planned, scheduled, and it can also auto scale. If the load is slowly increasing, it can auto scale. To answer that question, see, supposing on one instance, let's go back to this slide. See, one instance normally load is 10%. And when the load increases 20, 30, 40, 50, 60%, 70%, 80%, 90%, you can trigger the auto scaling to add one more instance. But if that instance takes 3 minutes to be ready to serve, and in that 3 minutes, if this 90 becomes 100 or 120, your users might experience disturbance. So then what you need to do is you need to lower the threshold to change it to say 60%. When the load on this instance increases to 60%, you add another instance. So this way, you as an AWS engineer will fine-tune your auto scaling conditions to avoid disturbances. Is it clear? So that is the set condition which is planned, scheduled, or need to change, update your condition. Yes, correct. And Kamlesh, if you request for more instances expecting more load, but there is not much load, then auto scaling will not launch new instance. In this case, we need to pay for those. No, absolutely not, Kamlesh. So Kamlesh is asking if we request for more instances expecting more load, but there is not much load, so auto scaling will not launch new instance. In this case, we need to pay for those instances? No. But this depends on how you have asked. Supposing you are telling Amazon to add 10 servers on Sundays, but that is a scheduled request. Amazon will provision 10 servers on Sundays. Whether they are being used, whether there is load or not, they will be, you will have to pay for those servers. But if you are setting the condition in such a way that if the load on your server increases, you add more servers, that is called conditions load based auto scaling, then those new servers will not get added, so you will not have to pay. Clear, Madhuri? On what basis it will share the data to instances if there is any algorithm used? Can you elaborate on this question, Madhuri? If you are talking of how it will detect the CPU load, etc., we saw in SNS how we can check EC2 metrics like CPU load, etc. So that is how it will detect the load. But I think if you don't want to elaborate your question, as we progress towards the practicals, things will become clearer. Okay, so let's proceed back to bootstrapping and horizontal scaling and vertical scaling. Okay, scaling advantages we saw, and these are the components. Before we do the practicals, little bit of terminologies. One is called, so this is the first one. Okay, let it be here only, but I will call it 1. This is 2, and this is 3. So now listen carefully. When you create an auto scaling, first you have to provide this auto scaling a launch configuration. This launch configuration will tell the instance type like T2 micro, user data, AMI ID. So launch configuration will tell auto scaling what type of instance you need. Okay, and what user data should be used for your instance. Is it clear? So anytime auto scaling creates new instances, it will use this launch configuration as a template. A template for new instances. Clear? Any doubt on why we need launch configuration? Should be very clear to you. Then what we have to do is we have to create an ASG called auto scaling group. This I may call it LC, this I may call it ASG. Okay, in auto scaling, we will use this launch configuration and tell auto scaling that use this launch configuration to create new instances when the conditions change. Okay, so there we can specify three things. One is minimum, another is maximum, and another is desired capacity. So if we tell minimum 2, and this is very, very important. If you tell minimum 2 and maximum 10, auto scaling will only manage instances of those numbers. It will never increase the maximum number of instances, and it will never allow the instance count to go below the minimum. Is that clear? Minimum and maximum are clear? Can I get some confirmations? Great. Now there is another confusing thing called desired capacity. That is the capacity normally you want it to use. So if you use minimum as 2 and maximum as 10 and keep this as 4, it will always keep 4 instances running. So why we need this desired capacity will become clearer as we progress. So for the time being, is this clear? Desired capacity? If it is not clear, I will tell you, you set a minimum of say 1 instance and you set a maximum of say 50 instances. When you launch the auto scaling, make it live, Amazon will not know how many instances to launch, whether to launch 1 instance as per the minimum count or maximum as per the maximum count. So you need a third parameter, desired capacity, and tell that you need 4 instances. Ashutosh says desired capacity will always be between minimum and maximum. Absolutely yes. Yes, desired capacity may be optimum number of servers, ideal for ELB setup. Yes. And Anand, is the instances in ASG are excluding the instances we already provisioned to run our applications in LB group? So Anand, this is an interesting question. I think better I answer this when we do the practicals. So Anand's question is, remember this question by Anand, is the instances in ASG are excluding the instances we already provisioned to run our applications in load balancer group. So just keep this question. And Sai is, can you please tell the scenario for ASG? Yes, that when we do the practicals, it will become clearer. So for now, just understand the 3 components of this auto scaling. And Rengarajan, when we have desired capacity as 4 and minimum as 2, if we perform an outage on 3 instances, what will happen? If we have desired capacity as 4 and minimum as 2, if we perform outage on 3 instances, it will try to create those instances to bring it to the desired capacity. Okay, Rengarajan, Anand, okay, Sai, ASG instances is go by LC template to answer. ASG instances go by LC template to answer. Yes, if they are already provisioned. ASG instances go by LC template to answer if they are already provisioned. Can you elaborate on that, Sai? with respect to Anand's question, we will see that. In order to answer Anand's question, we have to first study load balancer as in practice. So what I am planning is, I will first practically demonstrate how load balancing works without touching auto scaling. Okay, so we understand how load balancing works, and then we will go into auto scaling. At that time, that question will become relevant. Shivang, what is the difference between minimum and desired? So this question is little tricky. See, minimum is minimum number of instances at any given time auto scaling group should maintain, and maximum is maximum it can go. It should not exceed the maximum, it should not go below the minimum. This much should be clear. Now desired is a number that you can set manually, okay, set manually, so that Amazon will try to maintain the desired capacity at any given time. When I say try to maintain, here we can put conditions. If the load increases, then desired capacity will also be changed by Amazon. It will increase based on your conditions. So when we create an auto scaling group, you will enter the desired capacity, but based on your conditions, desired capacity will automatically adjust. Is it better now, Shivang? Okay, so depending on your number of customers accessing your application, desired capacity is what allows Amazon to flex or scale up or down. Scaling, adding more servers is called scale out, and reducing servers is called scale in. So desired capacity is a number that Amazon will also change, whereas min and max Amazon will not change. Kamlesh, as per this condition, it will never go down to 2 instances. No, it can go down to 2 instances, depending on your conditions that you set. Okay, so let's proceed. So auto scaling, minimum is 1 in this case, maximum is 4, and desired capacity is 2. But depending on the conditions, this desired capacity will change. Okay, now coming to a typical scenario. As we do our sophisticated case study towards the end of the course, this picture will become clearer to you now, and this picture will become more sophisticated. Now you have your auto scaling group, you have some instances running inside your auto scaling group. Now you have set some conditions using SNS alarm. If the load increases above, say, 60%, trigger an alarm. And our auto scalings, this icon is for auto scaling. So auto scaling policy will detect the alarm and add new instance based on the launch configuration, and the instance will be deployed to within the auto scaling group. And here I am not talking of load balancer. Any guess? Anybody wants to guess why we are not showing load balancer? Shivang saying we set an alarm. Not exactly. Kamlesh, it is outside this infrastructure configuration. Yes. And because LB is different than auto scaling, yes. So, see now this auto scaling need not have a load balancer. Santosh, load balance is not going to increase the capacity. Yes. Okay, so now let me explain. This load balancing is used to bring traffic from users to your servers. But your application need not have traffic. Your application can be video processing or image manipulation or image resizing or image format change application, which is processing on thousands of images, and for that there is no external traffic. The images are being served through some database or some other S3 bucket or something. So there one server will be processing image, and if the load is more or if it takes time to process, it can trigger alarm and provision more instances. Yes, Sai is saying it's not client traffic but resource getting busier. Yes, Ashutosh, auto scaling is a decision making component. ELB is the actual infrastructure. ELB brings traffic. So your application is relying on traffic, then you connect ELB to an auto scaling. But if your application is a backend processing thing, then also auto scale. What I want to say, highlight here is, independent of load balancing, auto scaling can be used in an infrastructure. So is that clear? Because your computing can be used to compute some DNA analysis, or some biological computing which can take days and months. So see, if the computing unit is taking time, you can add more instances to do parallelly process. So auto scaling infrastructure can be independently deployed of load balancing. I just wanted to highlight that aspect. So just because if there is no load balancing, don't think that it is not going to work. Auto scaling can work. Now here is an auto scaling. So let me auto scaling component without an ELB traffic. Okay, and next picture. Next picture is using an ELB traffic. Here again, ELB will bring traffic from thousands of users and distribute the traffic equally to these instances, but it can also trigger metrics. It can also send metrics to CloudWatch. So other than the CPU load or EC2 metrics, ELB can also send metrics which can trigger alarm, which can auto scale, which can scale up using the launch configurations AMI and add more instances. So this is more sophisticated infrastructure which uses an ELB as well. So towards the end of this course, you will be fairly conversant to build such really sophisticated infrastructure all by yourself. Any quick doubt on this picture? Look at this picture and see if you want to ask anything. Okay, anything you want to ask on this picture? Because understanding today's session is critical for your AWS journey, and subsequent sessions will be individual components again. But toward the end, we will come back to sophisticated infrastructure after we study some individual components. Okay, Subrod Jyoti is asking, can you explain why AMI is coming between in the scale-up launch? Let me address that question. Now, during scale-up, it has to use the launch configuration, and that launch configuration will need an AMI. It has to know which AMI ID to use. It can be your custom AMI, or it can be an Amazon's AMI, and it will add its user data if required. Or your custom AMI itself can have your user data. That is why AMI is added in this picture. Okay. Now, Santosh, here we can add new ELB as per requirement based on ELB metrics. No, Santosh, ELB is not added in an automated way. So that is why you need only one ELB in general. If you have multi-region infrastructure, etc., you will need multiple ELB. But in our case, we need only one ELB, which that is why there is a E here. It can grow in an unlimited way, but you need to study and see the limits. So for our purpose, assume that ELB is a very powerful load balancer. Okay. So Shivang, if we manage traffic via auto scaling, then why we use ELB? So Shivang question, let me address. See, auto scaling will add more instances, correct? This auto scaling will add more instances, but you have to have extra logic to bring traffic to these instances. You have one instance here, you have two instances, you have three instances, you have fixed, you have IP addresses on these instances, but user is browsing your domain name, say shivang.com. When they browse the domain shivang.com, there has to be a logic that will route that domain's IP to traffic to these instances. That is what this ELB is doing. That auto scaling cannot do. Okay. So that answers. Now, Anand, do we need to set CloudWatch alarm to monitor usage on instance in ASG, and then only ELB will be able to see the metrics, or ASG and ELB deployed monitoring metrics will get added automatically? And this question also is better answered when we do it in practice. And but when metrics are monitoring through Santosh, here can we add new ELB as per requirement based on ELB metrics? No, ELBs are not added, but which metrics we are monitoring through CloudWatch? Yes. So this when we reach ELB, we will see what metrics ELB can provide. Okay. But that we will only briefly touch upon. That is Santosh, but which metrics? Yes, Sai. So it is integrated effort. What is that, Sai? Can you Can you elaborate on the ELB and AS? Yes. ELB and no. See, now let me answer that. ELB and ASG can be together, or ELB can be independent. That based on the Anand's question. And ASG can be independent based on the type of processing, computing you are doing. You are doing some genetic processing or etc., where only computing is involved. So ELB can exist independently, and ASG can exist independently, and they can be existing in a hybrid way. That is to answer Anand's question. I can add manually 1 or 2 instances to ELB, which will stay there forever, and remaining instances I can auto scale. Don't we, so Santosh, don't we need to reconfigure ELB upon addition of new instances? Not really. Okay, so that ELB will understand. It will detect. Okay. How we will see. Okay. And Sarvesh, can we combine ELB through different availability zone? Absolutely yes. That is very, very critical. And Rengarajan, what is health check in step 5? Yes, that is a critical question. A clap for this question. I think somebody asked what, Santosh asked what metrics we are monitoring through ELB's CloudWatch. So now ELB can also add a thing called health check. Supposing your application, your instance, your AMI is being launched using your user data. At some stage, only your AMI, your instance will be ready. So that can be, browsing your domain name / login. When that login screen is serving the correct login prompt, then you know that your application is ready. So you can define such an URL to Elastic Load Balancer's health check to identify that instance is working correctly or ready to serve. And if that fails, it can send that as a metrics to CloudWatch to trigger auto scaling to add more instances. So for now, just keep this only in mind, Rengarajan, and what that health check is. Okay, we will touch upon when we do practice. Sai, ELB and ASG, how to auto, Subrul Jyoti, how auto scale down is done. Yeah, so now that also we will see. When the load goes down, depending on the condition that you scaling policy that you set, if the load on your instance is below 50%, you can define in such a way that it will terminate instances. Is that good enough for now? An explanation? So like how we scale up or how we scale out, adding more instances, there will be scale down condition which we set, so that when the load or the CPU usage reduces, it will bring down it will terminate the instances. Sarvesh, your hand is raised. Any questions? Okay, so great. So I think it is now Subrajyoti, but bring down instances may cause data loss, correct? Yes, this is a tricky question, Subrajyoti. Subrajyoti is asking, yes, but bring down instances may cause data loss. So this you have to design in your architecture. When you say data loss, what exactly do you mean? Your instances will not save data inside the instance. Like I mentioned, it will be separate database which will only vertically scale, which is not put in here. So what else will you write other than your main database? You can write session. Session is also stored in some kind of a storage. So every time you browse, every time you start browsing a website, a session is maintained so that your pages know what you have been doing. If you're adding something to cart, there has to be some session based mechanism to save your cart contents. So that also will not be a part of auto scaling. So in order to answer your question, yes, by bring down instances may cause data loss, you have to accordingly design in such a way that it should not cause data loss. You want to ask anything more on this answer? Great. So essentially you will not save anything into these instances. Ashutosh, we must note here that under ELB every instance is serviced the same data and instances are identical. So if an instance is brought down, ELB still functions absolutely. So you have to design in such a way that each instance role is identical, but some things you can do here to prevent any erratic behavior. We will touch upon. Sai, is there a possibility of having common instance which can be part of two different auto scaling? Is there a possibility of having a common instance which can be a part of two different auto scaling? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know, and I don't see why we would need it. So I will have to experiment, or you can also experiment this aspect. Okay. Any other question? Otherwise, it is best to take a break and come back and start with the practical. So before that, let me. Okay, now another picture. Here we have multiple. Multiple ASGs. Multiple ASGs. Okay, so here in this application, you have a web tier, an application tier, and database tier. They all will scale. These two will scale, and here there is no auto scaling, but I mentioned it can we can add read replicas or master slave configurations, which we will see when we touch upon. But your application tier and web tier can scale independently. Good. So there is this is another scenario. Okay, so we will leave at now. So 9:04. So we will meet at 9:19 to begin our experiments. Okay. Any unanswered questions? Did I miss any questions? So this question of Sai of attaching one instance, a common instance on two auto scaling, I have to think about it and see. Okay. Kamlesh, in my last several years, I never had to do such a thing. Unless I can explain why would one need it, and also you also see if you can do it. Then Kamlesh, database can't scale. See, database can't scale is a tricky question. Now that depends on your application. If you have a database that is continuously being written to, how can it ever scale? It has to be vertically scaled, and if the load is still more, you have to reprovision another database server with a higher power which can handle the load. Anand, what is the difference between application tier and web tier? Yeah, so that is a question which cannot be easily answered. See now, let me tell you. Say a WordPress, a WordPress application, which is a blog application. There are many things which will not have to go through the computing engine part, like your CSS pages, CSS files, your images, your static HTML content. Those will not have to be computed. They can be delivered by your web server directly. But it may have PHP tags, it may have your ASP or .NET tags or JSP tags, which has to be processed by the application before it can be delivered. That can be an application tier. For now, this explanation should be good enough. So your application can be divided into certain area which are purely managed by web server. Certain area will need backend Java engine processing or PHP or Node engine processing. That will be your application tier. Then Kamlesh, if you have a limited DB space allocated, if you had to, yes, those things we will address. We have to reprovision another database server and migrate. And Anand, in multiple ASG, what is that, Anand? In multiple ASG, like you can have an application tier scaling up. And in Rangarajan, in one load balancer is enough to manage web application and ASG, web and application ASG, or ASG needs separate. So this is another tricky question. Okay, so it is yes and no. You can route like Rangarajan.com, you can route it to a certain thing. You can route cdn.rangarajan.com and accordingly route your static content to those things and put another load balancer. You can do it both ways. Sai, client server architecture, yes. Sai, middle client, middle database, yes. Entire architecture, yes. Anand, okay. Ashutosh Singh, like one ASG for HTTP and other for FTP. It can be, yes, Ashutosh. It can be. Ashutosh Singh or some other service, yes. Okay, so there can be applications where supposing it is a video upload application, most of the time you will be browsing the website, but other time you may be visiting the upload section of your website, where this will scale up depending on the number of videos being uploaded. But this will scale up being number of users browsing the videos. So accordingly, YouTube browsing will have a web tier, but YouTube people who are creating YouTube videos and uploading will have an application tier, etc. Okay, so we will leave it here, 9:09. So we will meet at 9:24. Thank you for your participation. Excellent participation and questions. Bye-bye. I am muting myself. If any questions unanswered, please feel free to ask again when I come back. 9:24. Bye-bye. Okay, welcome back. Can you hear me? Can I get some confirmations? Am I audible? Okay, great. Let's now start. So, what we will do is forget about auto scaling group and launch configuration, etc. Just focus on load balancing only. Agreed? So we will see. I have no instance running. So what I will do, I will manually first launch one instance and create one web server, that is install one web server and create one web page, and when we browse this instance, this web server will deliver our web page with some instance information. Okay, so it will be like this. If you browse, I am a web page from instance, and it will give that instance IP address, that instance ID it will give, and host name. This you can ignore, and it will also tell you when it was created. But our focus is to notice this IP address. So far, what I said is clear. I am going to create, forget about load balancer also at this time. I am going to launch one instance and execute some commands to install a web server and to create a web page, which when we browse will give that instance information like this. Okay, it will not change. It will be permanent for that one instance. Agreed? Any guess why I am doing this? Anybody? Yes, so that we know which instance is serving the website. Okay, so how do we launch? We'll click launch, choose. Yes, exactly, Sai. Which page is created through which instance, so that we will know how load balancing and auto scaling, etc. will be working. So here I will use my way of creating the page, but you can be more creative and do in your own way as well. So I will create one T2 instance, and I'm not choosing anything special in here, and add volume, add tags, no tags, security group. We need the web server and SSH open, launch, and keep a launch instance. Okay, so let's see this instance coming up. I have created a set of commands which we will manually do, so that you will really understand the sequence of operations that we are doing. Okay, so let's see if the instance is ready. So instance is ready, and will I be able to browse this IP? Will I be able to browse this IP? Yes, not yet. Thanks, Sarvesh and Sai. No, because we have not installed the web server. It is this is an AMI which is not pre-configured to have a web server. If it was an AMI with pre-baked web server, we should have been able to browse. Now you can't browse. So and the services should be running, correct, Sarvesh. So what I will do is first we will log into the server and install some commands. So ssh -i. So let me go into the correct folder. -i Ubuntu. So anytime if I am doing something which is not clear, please interrupt. Okay. So I get into the instance and I'll go into sudo mode. In production server, I wouldn't recommend you to go into sudo mode. Here I am doing this to save the amount of typing. Okay. So apt-get update to update the package repository. Then I will install Apache 2. Which is a web server. Now let's refresh this. See, after we install Apache 2, is the video stuck? Shiva says video stuck. Are you able to see the web page? Yes. So Shivang, you need to check. Okay, you need to check your system or connection, etc. So see, now after we installed Apache, we are able to browse and see the default Apache's web page. Now what we will do, we will not, no need to delete this. We can try this command. It will create an indexed page. Okay. I just want you guys to see line by line. See, I replaced the default page with one line. Do you see this? Now, Shivang, are you able to see? Now, I am adding another line. So here I have two greater than signs. And when I refresh now, I will see the second line. I am adding curl. If you see the metadata, you will notice that metadata gives its public IP. See the public IP. So we can pipe that to the same web page, append that to the website so that we see the public IP. And if you refresh, we see the IP address of that server that we have created. So similarly, we have a couple of more lines. So all these lines, if we add, they will all get added to the page and it will look like this. So this is the user data script that we will use to ensure that any instance that we browse, we know the instance ID and the IP, etc., and the time of creation. So far is clear? Great. Now what I'm going to do is I will repeat, I will repeat this, I will terminate this instance. Okay, we don't want this instance. Shivang, you can't hear me? But others can hear. I think you need to check. Okay, so this instance is gone. Now I'm going to launch again another instance, same free trial, configure instance details, and here I will feed the user data. Okay, now Shivang is able to hear. I will feed the user data. So this is how, again I am showing you how the user data is created. So now when I create this instance, you don't have to manually execute any command. Instance will be readily browsable, and this instance will serve our newly created web page. Okay. Yes, I predefined way. Now this is the IP. Let's see if we can browse that IP address. Not yet. See, this is the initial time of creation, instance creation, time delay for the instance creation. It can take, Apache is not yet installed, so I am refreshing. Again, I am refreshing. I am refreshing. See, Apache is installed. Again, I am refreshing. User data is being installed. Refreshing. See, I deleted the folder, and now the web page has come. See, the instance ID has come. Instance ID is there, and if you look, we will see the instance ID. See the instance ID. So we auto created an instance which displays its own data. So now we have one instance, correct? One running instance. And when we browse that instance IP, we are able to see it. Now let's come to load balancer. I have no load balancer in Mumbai region. I'm creating one. Create classic load balancer. These are all newly added. It's not part of the exam and not part of the course. So load balancer name I give, say Sri's demo load balancer, and VPC we will study when we reach VPC section. For now, you keep it at default VPC. And we don't want internal load balancer. Enable advanced nothing, and load balancer protocol HTTP 80, instance protocol 80. That is all. We don't need to add anything more here. If you want to ask anything about it, feel free to ask. Security group, I choose this. You can leave this also on. It doesn't matter. And load balance is not using the same secure listener. We will answer this question later, or if you want to ask, you can ask anytime. But our focus is to understand practically how load balancer is going to work. Configure health check. See, health check, for me, only index page is there. If the index page is browsable on port 80, I know that my instance is healthy. And response time is 5 seconds. For now, I'll make it 3 seconds, and interval, I'll make it, say, 5 seconds. Unhealthy threshold, I'll keep it 2. And healthy threshold also, I'll keep it 2. If you keep your mouse on top of these question mark, it will explain what they are. Now, coming back to configure instances. See, I have one instance running. I have just one instance running. I can go to AWS EC2 on another tab, and this is the load balancer page. I have one instance running. See, instance ID ending in 803A, 803. So it's asking, do you want to add this instance to the load balancer? Or another way of saying is, do you want this instance to receive traffic from the load balancer? So I'll come to this page. So it is asking, do you want this instance to receive traffic from the load balancer? That is what this page is asking. I am going to say yes. Enable cross-zone load balancing, you can leave it. Enable connection draining, 30 seconds. I'll keep it 5 seconds. Okay. Any of these questions you can ask me anytime, but my focus is to demonstrate a load balancer. Add tags. Yes, Anand is asking what is connection draining. See, this is a tricky thing, which the instance can that the traffic from the instance to load balancer is over. Then only it will terminate the instance. It is something like that, but it is more complicated. So it adds an extra delay before the termination. For now, that much Sri's ELB created. Okay. No, we don't need this tag. Okay. Review and create. Yeah, Ejagani is asking what is the significance of tag. We are seeing some while creating instances also. Okay, let me create this and answer this question. Let me tell you one thing. Tags are really critical. Do not create anything without tags when we do production experiments or production work. Sai says it's a label, a kind of info. Sai also says it is description. Yes, but it can also do very powerful tagging. You can have tag called, say, type, and give it dev, give the value dev prod for production staging. You can add costing tag and say free, critical. Then you can say experimental tag and say yes. So then in one shot you can delete all the resources which are experimental. So a tag will come handy later on when you need to query hundreds of resources and delete or add or look at those resources. So it is very critical. Do not add anything without tagging. But in our class, it's not important because I'll be creating and deleting immediately. So then some cases I add, just to show you how to add, but other cases I may not add. Is that explanation enough, Ijagani? Yes? Okay, great. So now what I have done? Can anyone tell me what I have done? Understanding? Yes. Sai is saying created a load balancer and also added one instance. Exactly, Sai. So I created an ELB thing and added an instance. Exactly, Ijagani. Shivang added a server to ELB. Exactly. Correct. So now one more thing will happen. See here, I am browsing the instance. Okay, this instance is the old instance which I terminated. So I have one instance that I can browse. But now, yes, Sarvesh, created one ELB on web server and added one instance manually. Now in the load balancer, will give you one A record. That is, it will give you a domain name. A record is something like a domain name. And see, now I am browsing this instance directly, correct? Now I can browse that A record also. See, I am browsing the A record and it is reaching my instance. So in this picture, these two are not there. I have one instance with IP address, public IP address, which I can browse and reach the web server of this instance. But I also have a domain name, long domain name given by the Elastic Load Balancer. That when I browse, port 80 of that is reaching port 80 of that instance and serving the website. Do you see this? Understanding this should be very clear. Isn't this simple enough? Yes, Kamlesh is saying load domain name of load balancer can't be more meaningful. Yes, Kamlesh. You know, we can, when we study Route 53 and the DNS server, we will see how we can route your domain name, say kamlesh.com, to this. But load balancer will give only a long DNS name. You have to use another service called Route 53 to map a domain name to a load balancer, which we will study. Okay, clear, Kamlesh? So for now, for our experiments, we will use this as our load balancer endpoint, this thing. Shivang, is ELB translate as a DNS? Record is DNS name, which we can define our own. Yes. And Shivang, ELB treat as DNS. Yes. ELB cannot be treated as DNS. ELB will give you a record which can be used in your DNS as a zone record, which we will study soon. Like I said, in this course, certain things will overlap. For now, for you, this is the domain name of your ELB. Means web server is accessible through ELB's A record. Yes, Sarvesh. Rangarajan, okay, please ignore. Shivang, treat as DNS. Yes, Madhuri, see, if you add 2 or more instances, will browse through any A record. That is what we are coming to, Madhuri. So now let's come to Madhuri's question. Sai is saying, once a record is created, what would be the difference between exploring website through A record and direct with web address? Yes, we will see that. So these two. So Madhuri's question of add 2 more instances, we'll browse through any A record, and adding Sai's question of once A record is created, what would be the difference between exploring website through A record or direct? These two we are going to add now. So we are coming back to this screen. we have just one instance, correct? I am going to launch one more instance of the same type. Security group, edit instance. Let's see. I'm going to launch one more instance of similar type. Instance setting, user data. The user data is also there. So we will wait for this IP of this second instance to be browsable. This is our load balancer thing. This is our first instance. This is the IP address of the second instance. Let us wait for it to be ready. Okay, Apache is installed. That means user data is running. Now that instance is also ready. See, its IP is ending in 114 and this IP is ending in 208. So we have two instances. But if I refresh the load balancer, it is only getting 208 because we have attached only one instance to the load balancer. So what we are going to do is we are going to attach one more instance to the load balancer. If you refresh here in the instances, we see one instance is there. It's saying in service, which is the other instance. Its instance ID is ending in 579. So this is the one ending. Subnet ID, instance ID is not there. Instance count, healthy, availability zone, remove from load balancer, edit instances. I click edit instances. So to add an instance, I click edit instances, okay, and then choose the 579 and save. See, now this instance is out of service. Can anyone guess? Because the health check of that instance, elastic load balancer, is has got 5 seconds delay. Now if I refresh, it is in service. So now this load balancer has first one instance added, then one more instance added. So it is able to serve to traffic to both these instances. So how do we check it? The endpoint load balancer domain name is same, correct? There is only one A record. So Madhuri's question of if you add two more instances, will we browse through any A record? There is only one A record. So which is the ELB URL? But those two instances have two separate IP address. So now coming back to this page, I'm refreshing this. See, when I refreshed, the IP became 114. If I refresh again, the IP became 208. So every time I reload the page, you see that it is routing the traffic to one of the instances. It means load balancer is working. So you asked how to check if the load balancer is working. This is one way of checking. Rangarajan, disable one and test and then enable back and by disabling the second. Okay. So now do you see this? When I refresh, IP is changing, correct? Now let me come to the console, and this instance I will stop. Okay, I will stop one instance. Which one? 114 I am stopping. Now I am refreshing. See, only 208 is being served. Sarvesh, what is the policy of ELB? We will come to that. Okay, see, only 208 is being served. And load balancer instance stopped. Now I am going to stop this also. Stop will be any data on the wait. I only want to select one. I'm going to stop this running instance. So now both instances have been stopped. Now if I reload, nothing will happen. No web server. Now what I have to do is I will start this instance. Okay, let it this is stopped. Okay, so I'm going to start. Let's wait for it to be ready. But do you notice this? Its IP changed. Its public IP changed. Can anyone suggest why it changed? This is an exam question. Servicing, it is a DHCP IP. It is DHCP. It is not actually DHCP. It is the way Amazon does it. Every time you stop and start an instance, Amazon will change the IP. Not a service saying it's not a static IP. The correct terminology, it is not an elastic IP. If you pay for this IP by buying an elastic IP using this menu and attach it, then it will not change. Yes, Ijahani, we don't have elastic IP. That is why it is changing. But do we care? Madhuri, for security purpose, not really. It is because it is not an elastic IP. We did not pay for this IP. So Amazon, at this point, no. We don't care if this IP changes or not because we are using load balancer. Load balancer will auto adjust. If you refresh now, see 114 has come. Where is 114? Can anyone guess why it is 114? See, can anyone guess when there is only one? Yes, Shivang, the content we did not change because we reinitiated the no, Shivang. That 114 instance is gone, but our user data created the instance web page when that instance was created, but we stopped and restarted the instance. When you stop and restart, user data will not get re-executed. So one of you had asked me, will the user data get re-executed if you start and stop? So this shows that user data will not get re-executed. It will only get executed during the first launch of the instance. Exactly, Rangarajan says we created the web data when we, so in my demonstration I did not plan to stop and start. But since Rangarajan had asked me to stop and start, I demonstrated. So what I want to tell you is, stopping and starting, it will give the correct instant the traffic. Okay, so I will terminate these instances. And this also I will terminate. So we have no instances running. Yeah, not clear about the exam question. Exam question is, if you stop and start an instance, will the public IP change? Answer is yes, it will. But it will not change if you use an elastic IP. That is, you go here and buy an elastic IP and attach it to an instance if you pay. But unnecessarily you need to pay, but we don't need it because we are using a load balancer. When you use a load balancer will give you a domain name, which is something like an IP, which will auto route the traffic to the connected instances irrespective of the public IP. Anyone wants to guess how elastic load balancer will accomplish this? Anand says through instance ID. No, see how load balancer is able to talk to the instance even when the public IP is changing. It is a critical thing for you to understand. Anybody wants to guess? Domain name, Sai saying no, no. Rangarajan, ELB identify with instance ID, no. Anand says local IP, clap. See, the traffic between elastic load balancer and instances uses the local IP, which will not change. I told you instances will have private IP. It uses private IP. So the instances need not even have these public IPs. In fact, there is no need for us to be able to browse this public IP. Kamlesh, we have configured it already. Yes, but we have configured the instance into load balancer already. At that time, load balancer will save the private IP of that instance also along with the instance ID and other metadata. But the traffic will be routed through the private IP of the instance, which will not change when we stop and start. Okay. So that is, so now if you refresh, we see the instance is out of service because we terminated. After some minute it will go because we have no instance running in this thing. And so what we did now is we did not use auto scaling. We used a load balancer and one instance, then we used load balancer and two instances and saw that traffic gets distributed. Now somebody asked the yes, private IP Shivang will not change. Okay, delete, edit, health check, edit instances, edit listeners. See, edit listeners. Here, this page, I just want to highlight is the public URL of the load balancer. When you browse, this defines the port it will receive traffic, which is by default is 80, which is the default port of any web server, unless it is secured. Now, instance port can be something completely different. It can be 888, and it will go via the private IP's traffic and this port address of the instance, and Apache of this instance or Tomcat or whatever can be configured to serve traffic on this port so that no hacker can directly attack the instance. Do you get it? And if we had configured, Anand, you mentioned that ELB will use SSL certificate. Is this where we need to attach to add this, Anand, question? We have to click on this add button. So thanks, Anand, for asking this at the right time. When we add, here we can add SSL, HTTPS protocol. At that time, you can add the certificate, but it's not part of the course. But this is where you will need to add the certificate so that load balancer will manage the SSL. You don't have to install your SSL into your Apache or Tomcat. Okay, is that enough, Anand? Yes. Okay, okay, ask your other question. Why, Kamlesh, why SSL certificate is required? See, when you have a when you have a domain name kamlesh.com, which is a shopping cart where you will want to ask payment details like credit card, etc. Normal website http ://kamlesh.com is a not secured website where anything you type, anything you enter into any of the web page forms will go as plain text, which is insecure. People will not enter the card details in on such websites. So you will need to have a secure section which is https ://kamlesh.com, which will go to port 443 by default. And when you access such website, in order to ensure that that website certificate matches your kamlesh.com company or domain name, you have to buy the SSL certificate from a SSL provider, which will verify your authenticity, your company details, etc., company registration, etc., and sell you a certificate, which is called SSL certificate, which will have a private part and a certificate part, which you need to install on your web server. This is not part of the course, but this is how the procedure works. But what I'm saying here in reply to Anand's question is, you don't have to install those certificates on all your multiple instances. You can terminate your SSL on your load balancer itself and install the SSL on the one load balancer, and for users will see your secured website https kamlesh.com, which is pointing to your load balancer. And instance can serve internally some port 4043 or some other port address as well. Now, Anand's other question is the SSL certificate should be X509 format? Also, is this something Amazon will provide, or you can get it from any other? Normally, what I do for my customers is I buy from other providers, and the format that you can choose. There are many format options, but it's not part of the course. Okay, so you have to buy the correct format certificate from the certificate issuer. It can be 1024 bit encrypted format, 2048 encrypted, depending on the cost of your certificate. Anand, terminating SSL to LB also save money. We don't have to buy multiple for each instance. Not really, Anand, because this SSL you buy for your domain name. See, anand.com is a domain name for which you will buy the SSL, and anand.com will always end at the ELB. Okay, so even if you are installing these SSL on your individual instances, you will be installing the same SSL only. Okay. Any other question so far? So far we have covered only ELB. Shivang, your question? We have to pay for SSL? Yes, yes, we have to pay for SSL. It can be $20 per year or up to $200 per year, depending on the type of encryption and the type of SSL. You have to pay every year, like a domain name. Okay? You have to pay, as well as you have to ensure that your domain name matches your company or address proof. Then otherwise hackers can spoof your website by creating dummy certificates. Okay, so shall we leave ELB alone part? Yes, that is all maintenance stuff for the company side, correct. Company has to annually pay for the certificate. Company has to buy the certificate by proving to the certificate issuing authority, saying that they are the genuine owners of the domain name. And any website that you browse, a certificate, if you click the lock icon, you will see the owner information. Okay, so but that much is enough for certificate part, because that is not a part of the course at all. So coming back to load balancer, are we ready to move on? Anand, the availability zone for instance, do we need to specify at the type of instance creation for fault tolerance? Yeah, so now to answer this question, depending on who is creating the instance. If you are manually creating, you create on different availability zones. But if you are creating through auto scaling, then you specify the availability zones in your auto scaling definition, which we will see soon. Then auto scaling will put instances in those zones. Okay, so shall we proceed? Great. So coming back to auto scaling demonstration. So this web page I have explained, this the web page sample. So what we do is we will first, so this instance, this load balancer, we'll keep it. It has no instance running. This instance also I will remove. So it has no instance running, and our instances page, we have no live instance. Okay, agreed. We have an empty load balancer, but I tell you, empty load balancer also costs money. So don't leave any empty load balancer running after your experiment, delete it. Okay, now somebody asked for the configuration thing. You can define some stickiness of a load balancer. Like I think Rajendra asked, we will lose data. You can define, it's not a part of the course, but you can define stickiness and say, if I am browsing a load balancer and the first instance is serving me, I can tell that for next 5 minutes, my browser should only get traffic from that load balancer. This kind of a stickiness you can define, or you can also base cookie based stickiness. But in general, we will disable load balancer stickiness and manage the stickiness through application level stickiness. Any questions you want to ask here on the load balancer stickiness feature? Okay, so okay, Shivang, see, when I refresh the load balancer, what happened? every time I refreshed, it changed the instance? Yes or no? Yes, which may not be the ideal case for your specific application. You may not want your instance to change on every click of your website. So this you have to sit with your developer and see how your application should behave. Then you can say, you know that average 10 minutes a user is going to be on your website. Then you can say that after one instance communicates to your browser, that is you, one user, next 5 minutes, whatever you do on that URL or that website will be served from that instance. That is called load balancer generated stickiness. And normally it's kept disabled and application will handle. That is, your application given by your company or your developer should be intelligent enough to be completely independent of the instance that is serving your application. Okay, is that clear? Any questions so far? Anything you want to ask on this? Are we ready? So can we assume that essential usage of load balancer is clear or very clear to all of you? So you will be able to create 2 instances and attach to a load balancer, 2 or 3 instances, and use my sample web page so that you know which instance is serving you. Can I get some confirmations? Will you do this exercise? It is critical for your journey. Okay, great. So now what I'm going to do is, yes, thank you. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an ASG. So I have one ASG already created, which I will ignore. Create. When I create an auto scaling group, it is saying create a launch configuration or create auto scaling group using existing launch configuration. I can choose this, or I can show you that first you need to have a launch configuration. You cannot create an auto scaling group without a launch configuration, because auto scaling will need the template of an instance to create. Exactly, Sai, clap. So you need a template. So first let's create a template. Is free tier, again Ubuntu here, T2 micro, and we'll give it a name, demo LC. That is the name of the launch configuration. Request spot instance, no need. I hope you remember what this is. Because this is if you want to bid for some instance, so that when the price of that instance somebody is selling comes within that range, it will add to your auto scaling group. Ejagani Shardi asking why we are using T2 micro always, why not other types? Yes, see now for this is for demonstration I'm using T2 micro because I know it is one of the cheapest. So it is safer to use any one type for your experiments. Surveys, yes, it will be deleted when the match price. Yes, deleted or added. Okay. And here it is asking for a role. I can use the role, but it doesn't matter. I don't want these instances to use any of the other Amazon resources. If it is expecting to copy some files from S3 bucket or something like that, at that time we will need to specify a role to be used for these instances. Monitoring, detail monitoring, I can say yes for now, but this will involve cost. Otherwise, it will monitor only every 5 minutes. This will monitor every 1 minute. For demonstration now, I can provide the user data here itself. So that is a very interesting feature. So the launch configuration template itself, I can specify the user data. Do you see this? Any question? Any questions on this page? Shivang, what is mandatory question for this configuration? The name is mandatory, user data is not mandatory, but then your AMI should be readily usable or customized AMI you should have selected. Here I have selected a generic Amazon AMI. So that is why I am putting the user data. I think that part should be clear by now. And default space and security group, I will choose this one and create launch configuration. It will also need to know the key to be used for instance access. Okay, now tell me, can you guess? Shivang, do you have any question? Your hand is raised. Now I'm going to ask you a question. I created a launch configuration. Will it cost money? Kamlesh saying no. Exactly, it will not. Shivang saying yes. No. Since it is, Kamlesh saying since it is just configuration, absolutely. Shivang, it did not use internet. It is just a configuration. See, Amazon is happy because we created launch configuration, because using which we will launch instances which will give Amazon money. Creating instance will give Amazon money, but creating launch configuration is a template which is not going to cost them money, but it will give them opportunity to create users creating instances. You got it? So once you understand the psychology behind Amazon's revenue system, you will know what is going to cost and what is not going to cost. Okay, so what I did, I created this launch configuration demo LC. Ignore this one for now. So now I come to auto scaling group. Create a new auto scaling group. And here I will choose the demo LC launch configuration which I have used, which is the template this auto scaling group will use. Group name, I will call it demo ASG. And start with one instance. I will keep it like that. Okay. Now see, like Anand had asked me about the subnet. manually, like I answered, manually when we create instances, we can put it in different subnets, but auto scaling group, when it creates new instances, you can tell how you want it to distribute the instances in different availability zones. So if you click here, you will see our Mumbai region has got 2 availability zone. You can choose both. Some US region will have up to 6 availability zone. You can choose all of them so that instances will get added in those availability zones. Okay, advanced details, load balancing. I won't answer this now. Monitoring, I can check mark, not that important. Instance protection. See this one. Scale in. So if like somebody has data loss, this is another crude way of preventing data loss. That is, it will not terminate the instance if it scales in. But then you have to investigate and see the best way, and then accordingly to use it. Keep this group at its initial size. Use scaling policies to adjust the capacity of this group. I am not adding any scaling policy. Okay. Do you get this? I am not adding any scaling condition, or I am not adding any auto scaling condition, or I am not adding any scheduled scaling condition. Add notification. I am not adding any notification. Tag name. I will add a tag ASG demo. So it will, any instances it creates, it will give its tag so that we know who created the instance. Review. Okay, health a great speed. One thing, health a grace period, I will change it to 10 seconds to save our training time. Otherwise 5 minutes it will wait. Okay, configure. This is their review. So I am going to create auto scaling group. When I click create, what will happen? Can anyone guess? Anyone? When I click this, what will happen? What will happen to this page? When I create, when I press this button, what will happen here? Okay, let's see. Failed. Auto scaling name already, yeah. Read back to review screen. I use the same name. Auto scaling October 15th. I'll put. Okay. Review, create. Now here, if I refresh, what will happen? Anything will happen. Anything should happen. See, one instance has come. Exactly, Santosh. Clap. New instance will get created, because why one new instance came? Why one instance came? Because it is zero processing. No, because we specified in the auto scaling thing one instance. Yes, exactly, Sai. So let's come to auto scaling group. This is our October 15th auto scaling group is what we have created, and this is the edit page of that. How many instances we have? We have one instance running, correct? Now if I change the desired to 2, and say maximum I'll keep it 4, desired to 2, let's try. Yes, I change the desired to 2. Now if you reload, what will happen? See, one more instance is auto created. Now can you tell me, is this auto scaling? No, exactly, because manually we set the numbers. We did not specify any scaling policy. We specified the number of instances manually, and desired number is what it arrived at. It did not look at the thing. Now look at the, now can we, if you have to browse these two instances, what you have to do? Can anyone tell? Time is over for today's session, but quickly I want to show you something. If we have to browse these instances, what we have to do? Can anyone tell? Attach them. Yes, exactly, Kamlesh. Clap. Or browse the IP address of this instance to browse this instance, or browse the public IP of this instance to go to this. But we don't want that. We want to attach both the instances to load balancer. How do we attach? There is one very interesting way to attach. Sai, which config? Edit instances, Kamlesh? Not exactly. That is how we added manually. But in auto scaling group, there is one setting. Okay, I'll keep this in the instance page. This is our auto scaling page. This is our auto scaling. Here one thing is there. Here you can choose the load balancer to route traffic to this auto scaling group, and I can choose my load balancer. You see this? Moment I say yes. So now before I do that, before I type yes, we have two instances running, correct? Let's come to our load balancer. If I reload, will it work? Anand, should we create main instance through auto scaling group? Anand, I will come to that question. So see, load balancer has no instance, correct? Now, moment I click save, this auto scaling group will receive traffic from the load balancer. I'm going to do that. Now, if I reload the load balancer URL, why it's not coming? Because it will take some time for load balancer to make the instances available and ready. See, it auto scaling attachment it detected. For us, let it become ready for the health check. Sarvesh, which template new instance is created? That we used the launch configuration template. See, this is the IP address of one instance. When I refresh, IP address changed. See, so both these two instances, who created? So I am browsing the Elastic Load Balancer, and tell me these two instances, who created? Exactly, Kamlesh. Auto scaling group created the instances and attached. Now, if I change this, edit the auto scaling group and change this desired to 3, what will happen? It will add one more instance, and in the activity history, you will see that it is going to launch one more instance, and load balancer will get one more instance soon. And one more instance will come here. And it will also be bootstrapped with our web page using the launch configuration. See, this is the delay of an instance getting created and added to load balancer. See, it has come. It is now out of service because health check will take some time to detect that instance is up. After that, when we refresh this page, now it is 214.132, 214.132, 214.132.124. See, 214.132 and 124. See, all the three instances are being cycled by the load balancer. Probably next class, can you please tell the scenario when minimum instance condition is met in ASG? Kamlesh, that will be automatically answered when we do add the scaling policy. So that doubt of Kamlesh will be answered when we add the scaling policy. And where we will stress one instance by increasing its CPU load, and we will see that new instances are getting added and the desired capacity changes. But today we had, I think today has been a heavy session, but I must tell you, you have to understand this really well by doing it. So whatever we have covered in this today's session, please do it, so that next session we will add the auto scaling policy and continue our experiments. Any questions so far? If not, we'll continue with our questions in next session. So thank you for your participation, and remember, terminating this, you can't terminate this. If you terminate, instance will come again. So if I go to instances and terminate an instance, immediately we will lose 1 hour and one more instance will come, because desired capacity is set as 2. So one new instance will come. And this also can be seen in the activity history of the auto scaling group. Yes, Kamlesh, detailed monitoring will increase cost, but I just wanted to speed up our demonstration. That is why. So anyway, these instances will get deleted, so the cost is not important. See, it is launching new instance. Let's come back to the instances and see what is happening. New instance will come. Its desired capacity is set as 3. So the instances will have to get created. Let's wait for it to come. Terminated, it hasn't come. We only have 2 instances running. Let's see load balancer, how many are there. Instances, only 2 are there. We also need how to scale out when the instance is already running. Yes, Anand, those questions we will cover once we have the policy added. Okay, so I think I will demonstrate this in the next class instead of waiting and taking additional time. It's already 10:40, but we will repeat this to show you that if you terminate an instance, it will get auto created. Okay, but that time delay, etc., we need to see health check time delay, the creation time delay, etc. How to auto scale the certifications. That is a joke, right? Your Amazon certification, right? See, plan. See, now I am giving you the practical example of what is required. See the new instances come. See, so that completes today. So this much of practical exposure you will never get anywhere. So now all that you need to do is by heart those numbers based on the syllabus of the certification, and you will 100% pass. So you can definitely auto scale your number of certification. Okay, so that now the terminate. First we have to edit the auto scaling. You have to start with the certification part. Kamlesh, I will address. There is a topic session handling certification. So to stop the traffic, first I remove the load balancer from the auto scaling group. Then I edit and decide I will make it 0, and minimum I will make it 0. Then actually there will then it will start terminating the instances, but to speed up I will manually terminate the instances. Okay, this is running, this is running, this is running, and action instance state terminate, and before terminate just ensure that they are ASG created instances. Okay, now I'm again emphasizing, please do this using your AWS account, then only you will understand how complex this is, and you will be able to be confident of doing this on your own. Okay, thank you. I'll mute myself. Thank you, and see you soon. Yes, I will upload, Sarvesh. Next week there is no class, and week after next weekend is the next class. That is 28th Saturday. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you all for your wonderful participation. Bye-bye. Same to you. Happy Diwali to all of you. Bye.